Karyn White was once on top of the world, a powerhouse R&B singer whose voice defined late 1980s hits like Superwoman and Secret Rendezvous. She had the looks, the talent, and the momentum to become one of the biggest stars of her generation. Yet, almost as quickly as she rose to fame, she seemed to vanish from the spotlight, leaving fans to wonder what really happened. Was it a choice, or was it something far more heartbreaking? Stay tuned as we explore the untold story of Karyn White and why her journey turned out to be more tragic than many ever realized. Karyn White's story begins in Los Angeles, where she was born to Vivian and Clarence White. She grew up as the youngest of 5 children, which meant she was always surrounded by family, love, and energy. Being the baby of the family also came with its own unique spark. Her siblings often looked out for her, but Karyn quickly proved she had a light and talent that stood out on its own. From a very young age, Karyn's parents noticed her passion for performing. They weren't just supportive, they actively encouraged her dreams. While some parents might push their kids toward more traditional paths, Vivian and Clarence saw how much music and performance meant to their daughter and stood behind her as she explored her love for the stage. That foundation of family support gave her the confidence to chase her big dreams. Like many great singers, Karyn first found her voice in the church choir. Singing in church wasn't just about music, it was about spirit, community, and discipline. There, she learned how to project her voice, connect with an audience, and most importantly, sing with emotion. It was also the place where she realized she had something special. Her voice wasn't just another child's playful singing. It carried weight, depth, and soul. In addition to music, Karyn was also a cheerleader. She had the energy, charisma, and performance skills that made her shine on the sidelines. But as exciting as cheerleading was, she faced an unexpected problem. Her voice was constantly hoarse from all the yelling and chanting. Since singing was her first love, Karyn made the tough decision to quit cheerleading to protect her voice. She knew she couldn't risk damaging the very gift that could take her to the big stage. It was a sacrifice, but one that showed how serious she already was about her future. Her early dedication soon paid off. After years of honing her talent, Karyn got her first real taste of the professional music world as a backing singer. She learned the ropes by working behind the scenes, supporting other artists, and sharpening her skills. Backing vocals might not have been glamorous, but it gave her invaluable experience. It taught her discipline, timing, and how to blend her voice to make a song truly shine. Her big break came in 1986 when she teamed up with jazz keyboardist Jeff Lorber. Karyn lent her vocals to several songs on his Private Passion album, including Facts of Love, True Confessions, and Back in Love. These performances showcased her incredible range and charisma, catching the attention of music insiders who could see she was destined for something greater. Working with Lorber gave her the exposure she needed to move beyond backup singing and step into the spotlight. Soon after, Karyn White signed with Warner Brothers Records, officially marking the start of her solo career. With her powerful voice, undeniable charm, and natural stage presence, she was ready to become the kind of star her parents always believed she could be. She released her self-titled debut album in 1988. That debut album was a smash. Produced by L.A. Reid and Babyface, two of the most powerful forces in R&B at the time, it delivered hit after hit. Superwoman, in particular, struck a chord with women across generations. It was a song about strength, sacrifice, and the pain of being taken for granted, wrapped in a melody that demanded attention. The track shot to number 8 on the Billboard Hot 100 and became a timeless anthem. Her success wasn't just about the music, it was about her image. Karyn White was stylish, confident, and unapologetically feminine. At a time when Black women often struggled for mainstream recognition in pop and R&B, she embodied power and grace in equal measure. The critics hailed her as the next big star, and for a brief moment, it seemed like nothing could stop her. After the huge success of her debut, Karyn returned in 1991 with Ritual of Love, her second studio album. The project featured the hit single Romantic, which topped the Billboard Hot 100, proving she wasn't just a one-hit wonder. But the music landscape was changing. New Jack Swing was taking over, and competition in R&B was fiercer than ever, with stars like Janet Jackson, Whitney Houston, and newcomers like Mariah Carey dominating the airwaves. Though Ritual of Love did well, it didn't reach the same level of acclaim as her debut. And in the music industry, that dip in momentum can be dangerous. Labels expect each project to outshine the last, and when it doesn't, they start to lose faith. Her third album, Make Him Do Right, came in 1994. Despite strong vocals and production, it didn't perform nearly as well as her earlier work. By then, Karyn was beginning to feel the weight of the industry's unforgiving nature. Fans still loved her, but behind the scenes, record executives were shifting focus to newer acts. At the same time, Karyn White was experiencing major changes in her personal life. She had married Terry Lewis, the legendary producer who, along with Jimmy Jam, was responsible for countless hits by artists like Janet Jackson. The two had a daughter together, and Karyn's priorities began to shift. For years, she had been defined by her career, touring, recording, promoting, living under the constant scrutiny of the industry. But motherhood changed everything. She wanted to be present, to raise her daughter, and to step away from the relentless demands of the spotlight. In interviews, she has admitted that she made the conscious choice to walk away from the industry to focus on family. While that choice was admirable, it also came with a heavy cost. The music world is unforgiving to women, especially Black women, who take time away. Unlike many male artists who could disappear and return without question, Karyn's absence was treated as the end of her career. By the late 1990s and early 2000s, Karyn White had all but disappeared from the mainstream music scene. Karyn was raising her child when life hit her with two devastating blows. First, she lost her mother, who had been one of her biggest sources of love and support. Soon after, her marriage ended in divorce. In her own words, she described those two moments as losing the two loves of my life. For someone who had always leaned on her family and relationships to keep her grounded, the pain was overwhelming. From the outside, people saw a successful star. But inside, Karyn was struggling. She admitted that she had been chasing fame and working hard since she was just 8 years old. For years, that drive paid off. She was on the charts, on stage, and on magazine covers. But when her family life crumbled, she realized something painful. She had achieved success in music, but she wasn't successful in life. That was a turning point. Karyn realized she needed to grow, not as a performer, but as a woman. She described it as going on a journey of self-discovery. For the first time, she asked herself hard questions. What does success really mean? What good is fame if you lose the people and values that mean the most to you? For Karyn, the answer came through faith. She came to believe that real success wasn't about awards, money, or fame. It was about living in the will of God. She admitted that she had lost her way. She never thought she would one day feel spiritually unbalanced. She never thought she would stop wanting to sing. And she certainly never imagined she would face divorce. But those painful moments forced her to reevaluate everything. Then, in 2007, after years of wondering if she would ever return to music, there was finally a sign of hope. Shout! Factory released Superwoman, the best of Karyn White, a collection of her hits that also included two songs that fans had never heard before, All I Do and Disconnected. To fans, it felt like a gift. But behind the scenes, there was more to the story. Those songs weren't brand new. They were pieces of a project Karyn had been working on years earlier. At one point, she was supposed to release a fourth album with Warner Brothers. Everything seemed set until a major change happened. Her manager at the time, Benny Medina, left the label. Without his support, Karyn was suddenly dropped. Not ready to give up, she signed with another record company. For a moment, it looked like things would move forward again. But something went wrong, and the new project fell apart before it was finished. For Karyn, it was another painful setback. Still, one of those songs, All I Do, stood out. Karyn herself described it as incredibly special because it marked a turning point in her artistry. In the past, she had sung from joy, ambition, and confidence. But this time, her voice carried something new, raw pain. She explained that the gritty, passionate way she sang came from personal heartbreak, specifically, the loss of her relationship with Terry Lewis. That was her first demonstration of the new Karyn. She had never sung from pain before. And that's what made it powerful. Fans who heard All I Do could feel the difference. It wasn't just about perfect notes or polished production. It was about truth. Karyn had lived through struggles, and her voice carried the weight of those experiences. That song gave the world its first glimpse of a woman who had been broken, but who was learning to channel that brokenness into something beautiful. It wasn't just the return of a singer, it was the rebirth of an artist who finally knew what it meant to sing from the depths of her soul. When Karyn White finally decided to return to music after nearly 17 years away, she wanted everything to be meaningful. Her comeback couldn't just be about singing again. It had to reflect everything she had lived through, from heartbreak to healing. Most fans didn't know how she came up with the title of her comeback album Carpe Diem, released in March 2012. The story behind it is powerful, and in many ways, it shows exactly who Karyn had become after all her struggles. The phrase Carpe Diem, which means seize the day in Latin, actually came from someone very close to her, Bobby G. At the time, Karyn wasn't in a recording studio or on stage. She was lying in a hospital bed, facing something she never expected. After being healthy for years, suddenly she was hit with a series of serious health challenges. She had female health problems that needed surgery. But what was supposed to be a simple medical procedure turned into a nightmare when the doctors made a mistake. One surgery turned into 2, and then into 3, all in just 1 month. It was shocking, even for someone as strong as Karyn. Imagine being away from the spotlight for so long, finally finding the courage to create music again, and then being knocked down by health struggles you never saw coming. Karyn admitted it was one of the most difficult times in her life. She was physically weak, emotionally drained, and at one point, she probably wondered if she would even be able to finish her comeback. That's when Bobby G looked at her and said the words that would change everything. Carpe diem. Seize the day, you're gonna be alright. Those words hit her deeply. They weren't just encouragement. They were a reminder of what life is really about. You don't wait for the perfect moment to chase your dreams. You don't let setbacks define you. You grab every single day and live it to the fullest, because you never know what tomorrow will bring. Karyn was so moved by Bobby's words that she immediately asked him if she could use Carpe Diem as the title for her album. He agreed, and that became the guiding light for her project. With the help of her longtime friend and songwriter Tony Haynes, she poured her soul into the music. What makes this story even more inspiring is the timing. After being away from the industry for nearly 2 decades, Karyn was finally ready to share her voice again. And just when she thought she was back on track, life threw her one of the hardest challenges she had ever faced. But instead of giving up, she used it as fuel. She saw the surgeries and setbacks as proof that tomorrow isn't promised, and that if you have something inside you, a gift, a dream, a message, you can't wait to share it. She said, "All of these years, I've been healthy. Then I decide to work again as an artist, and I've got to have 3 surgeries in a month." It was almost like life was testing her, asking, "How badly do you want this? Are you really ready to come back?" And Karyn's answer was yes. Carpe Diem wasn't just an album title, it was her personal declaration. She had been through love and loss, through fame and silence, through spiritual searching and personal pain. And now, she was ready to step back into the spotlight with a new perspective. She wasn't just singing to be famous again. She was singing because she had lived, she had survived, and she had something real to say. By the time Carpe Diem was released, it represented more than music. It represented her comeback as a whole person. Every lyric and every note carried the weight of her journey. For Karyn, Carpe Diem wasn't just about making a return to the industry. It was about proving that even after years away, even after heartbreak, loss, and surgeries, she could rise again and remind the world of her gift. And she did exactly that. When Karyn White stepped away from the music industry, many people assumed she had retired quietly into the background. But Karyn wasn't the type of woman to just sit still. While she may have walked away from the stage, she walked straight into another world where she could use her creativity, discipline, and business sense, entrepreneurship. Karyn became a businesswoman. She began flipping homes and building a career in real estate, something most fans never expected from the glamorous singer they knew from the late 1980s and early 1990s. She would later joke, "I'm a businesswoman now. I'm flipping homes, trying to be Donald Trump." That line said it all. Karyn wasn't chasing fame anymore. She was chasing financial freedom. She wanted her name to mean something in the business world, just as much as it did in music. She made it clear that she wasn't the same artist who first entered the industry years earlier. She was older, wiser, and smarter about how the business worked. Karyn knew the pitfalls of the music industry, especially the contracts that left artists with little to show for all their hard work. She didn't want to fall into those traps again. For her, success was no longer about chart-topping singles or magazine covers. It was about being, as she put it, famous at the bank. This mindset completely changed the way Karyn looked at the industry. She openly rejected the idea of signing a 360 deal, a type of contract that allows record labels to earn money from nearly every aspect of an artist's career, from album sales to tours to merchandise and even outside business ventures. To Karyn, this was unfair and made no sense, especially for someone who already had a name as established as hers. Why would I come back to that situation when I have a name? And she was right. Warner Brothers Records had already spent millions of dollars building her brand, making sure people all over the world knew who Karyn White was. She didn't need to start from scratch. All she had to do was reintroduce herself to her audience. That was her advantage. With that understanding, Karyn decided that if she was going to return to music, she would do it on her own terms. She didn't want to be controlled by a label, nor did she want to give away her power for the sake of a contract. Instead, she saw an opportunity to take charge of her own career through her own company, Karyn White Enterprises. Through her company, Karyn could own her work, make the kind of deals that benefited her directly, and keep her creative freedom intact. She considered doing a joint venture with a label, but only if the deal made sense financially. Unless a label was willing to invest millions of dollars up front, she wasn't interested. Why settle for less when she had already built a legacy and a fan base? This move showed just how much Karyn had grown since her early days in the music business. Back then, she was the young, bright-eyed singer eager to make it big. Now, she was a woman who had been through heartbreak, motherhood, business ventures, and health struggles. She had learned the value of independence and was no longer willing to compromise her worth. In many ways, Karyn's journey into entrepreneurship made her stronger when she returned to music. Flipping homes wasn't glamorous work, but it taught her lessons about patience, negotiation, and seeing the bigger picture. She began to see herself not just as an artist, but as a brand, a business, and a leader. By the time she came back to the music world, Karyn White wasn't just a singer. She was a smart, self-sufficient woman who knew how to protect her talent and her money. She had grown from chasing fame to chasing financial freedom and legacy. That perspective shaped everything about her comeback. It wasn't just about music anymore, it was about ownership, control, and making sure her name worked for her in every way possible.